Welcome to the Brainiate Show, where we talk about all things Salesforce, sharing the coolest features, solutions, and best practices to turn you into a Salesforce rockstar. Here's your host, former attorney turned Salesforce consultant, trainer, and MVP, David Giller.
In this episode, I chat with Denise Carbone. Denise is currently Director of Client Engagements at Relation Edge, based in Chicago. Denise is a Salesforce MVP, a Chicago user group leader, and an all-around awesome person. During our chat, Denise shares some valuable insights explaining how she persisted and overcame her initial frustration and anxiety with Salesforce to become a Salesforce evangelist, user group leader, and a community rock star. Denise Carbone, welcome to the show. How are you today?
David, good. How are you?
I can't complain. I'm really excited to have you on the program. You are a legend in the Salesforce community, and I think you have some valuable insights and wisdom and maybe some funny stories, maybe some horror show stories to share with the listeners. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And likewise, I'm very happy to be part of your series. So I'm very excited to be here today.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about how you were first introduced to Salesforce as a tool. Like, where were you? What kind of place were you at in your career? Tell us a little bit about that experience and what it was like for you.
So I'm an old schooler. My first experience with being introduced to Salesforce as a tool was in 2004. I was working for a technology company in Chicago, and I joined their team. I had previous backgrounds in other companies, insurance companies mostly, as a business analyst. And I joined this technology company to help with their sales and marketing. And joining the team, one of the tools they provided me was Salesforce, and they needed someone to own Salesforce. I was very intrigued by it. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And I did have previous CRM experience. I did use, again, I'm going to age myself, but I used tools like Act and Goldmine as a true CRM, but those are, glorified address books. So when they were kind of explaining the tools and said, your CRM tool is going to be Salesforce, and I wasn't too intimidated by the name at first, and got access to it, got my login, and was kind of overwhelmed by what I saw, because it definitely did not look like an Act or Goldmine. There's tabs like opportunities and these activities and cases and things like that. I was just completely overwhelmed, and as I started digging into each of the respective tabs and objects, I was kind of thrown off, because I'm looking at this data and trying to figure out, what am I looking at? Why is it the way it is? They're asking for these high-level types of reports, which I was, trying to mine for them. I was always good with Excel and different spreadsheets, so I'm thinking, it shouldn't be that hard. Trying to pull together this data was really challenging. So I will be completely honest, I absolutely hated Salesforce for about the first 6 months. And then one day, it's terrible. And it makes your job terrible when you're supposed to own something and you're not sure what the heck you're doing. I finally clicked, and I figured out that I don't hate Salesforce. I actually started figuring out it was a relational database. So accounts are the top of the hierarchy. You have contacts. You have the related opportunities to accounts. We had no process to manage. We had no sales process that was stringent enough and with enough rigor to actually get the data that they're looking and that they were asking me to pull. So once I realized it wasn't a tool issue, it was more of a process issue, I started diving into it, and I actually really, really fell in love with the tool. I figured out how to actually, customize it further, build what we needed, add attributes that were going to be helpful for us for the data mining that was being requested. And it was just kind of a cool, aha moment, and that was back in, like I said, 2004. It kind of evolved from there, and I actually was dying to learn more about the tool. I would laugh, because back in the day they did not have Success Community. I had a 415 area code phone number for support with Aloha music. Oh, I got, I can still hear that song in my head. But I would call support and I would like, sit on the phone and it was very generic and I'd ask the questions, I would get the help I needed. And I would also call in emergency cases my account executive. I was like, Eric, help me, like I can't
Mhm.
figure this out. Or we would actually he'd sit on the phone and we'd walk through stuff and scenarios. And he was super helpful and we laughed today. We're actually Facebook friends.
Mhm.
I see him. He's based in San Fran, but I see him when he comes out to Chicago on occasion, still at Salesforce. Good guy, but it's just
That's
funny
great.
because the evolution of how things have changed, it's amazing.
Hmm. Absolutely. And you're pretty lucky that rather early on you had that light bulb moment of recognizing where it's a relational database in order to take that type of corrective action and get the appropriate perspective. Because as I have many clients, and I'm sure you have as well, and many of the listeners are working in some organizations where um, things don't make a whole lot of sense. It's usually because they're missing that understanding of a relational database that different
Mhm.
records relate to one or multiple other records in various ways.
Mhm. Yeah, like the old school I remember the data mining things that was like perplexing me and I was like, why can't I do it? Is, they all wanted to see certain opportunities that were rolling up to certain accounts and like just the
Mhm.
hierarchical
Mhm.
parent-child relationship to accounts. I was creating, back then these roll-up summary fields, which were super complex because I wasn't sure what I was doing. And then
Right.
I figured out like how this all works. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is all I
Mhm.
have to do. But
Yeah.
it took just some tenacity and not giving up. There was I think a lot of people learn like this, but I have to be hands-on, and it's almost you have to get to the point of a little bit of an anxiety, some frustration to actually have that learning moment. If something comes
Right.
too easy, I'm always like, what's the catch? Because there's
Right.
there's got to be
Absolutely.
something else, right? So
100%.
it's yeah, it's pretty cool. So I was very proud of myself, but then I realized I think as most people do that dive into the world of doing, admin work or anything with Salesforce is that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon because there's
Mhm.
always something changing. There's always things are evolving with this tool and I kind of saw this whole wave
Yep.
of going from Salesforce, the platform, to the different specific clouds, which was completely different because I remember
Mhm.
when everything was just simply Salesforce.
Right. Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about, with regard to the clouds, I understand that you have some experience with the community cloud. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that was a fun kind of an evolutionary moment for myself, and it's actually one of my most recent kind of things I've been starting to tackle.
Mhm.
I've always been a declarative admin,
Yep.
and Community Cloud for me was very interesting because as a declarative admin, I actually did some customizations with the old like PRM tool, so the Relationship Management Portal.
Mhm.
So I understood what portals were. It was more like kind of self-service. You gave access to people to log in to, log cases, see some data that they might own. They're not true, they're users of your system, but it's more they get portal access to it.
Right.
So I was familiar with that kind of setup and angle from, being a declarative admin. Community Cloud, the evolution, and then that was I was getting some projects where I had to focus on building out, community, and I was doing, this things with this templates
Yeah.
and, Salesforce tabs and Visualforce, and I was like, okay, this is just a portal. I'm like, what's different about it? Well, the Community Cloud is a whole different ball of wax.
That's right.
And in reality, it's very similar to a portal, but with the Community Cloud, it's super complex if you're a straight declarative admin and you've only kind of focused on using like the Aloha or classic versions of Salesforce. Because if you try to dip your toes into the template pond, you
Mhm.
need some knowledge of Lightning. You need to understand what is Lightning, what are components, how do you work a WYSIWYG, where it's different than if you're straight declarative and it's point and click and
Yep.
you can do configuration. It was a life-changing event for me to kind of figure out. And I don't want to say I've mastered the WYSIWYG, but
Right.
I'm actually very comfortable behind the scenes now in building pages and understanding page layouts, understanding when, how to pull components onto page layouts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a learning curve, but again, I had some frustration at first because I was not exposed to or very familiar with
Right.
Lightning.
It's new. Yeah.
And yeah, I remember one time I actually made a post. It was on a social media channel, and we have a lot of friends in the social media channel.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a comment of I'm not a fan of, and I made the lightning bolt comment. And it
Mm-hmm.
was just like I was just kind of felt defeated that day. I was like going on and on, and I couldn't figure out something. And it was funny because I actually wasn't trying to even do an SOS call. It was more like I just need to say something because I'm just
Right.
having a day.
I need to
And
vent for a moment. I'm not screaming
yeah,
fire, but I need to vent. And Marc Benioff responded.
yeah, right. I'm laughing because I'm like, oh my God, and I was just frustrated, and then I got all these responses, and all these people were, well, why not? What's going on? How do you need help? I'm like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, I was like laughing, and then I actually, through Shauna Wolverton had um, reached out to some folks in the community cloud
Mm-hmm.
and connected me. She actually was the one to help
Wow.
identify that I actually wasn't hating Lightning. What I didn't like was Community Builder.
Right.
And because I was struggling with taking the next step and doing something, I just couldn't get started. I couldn't figure out how to get going with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is using Lightning, but it was the Community Builder was what I couldn't figure out how
Right.
to navigate.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, it was it was a newer product. I think it was probably only 9 months, 10 months out at the time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe about a year, but it wasn't, it's a lot more sophisticated than it is now. And then spring 17, the workspaces now makes it a whole lot easier to kind of navigate that. But when I was first doing this and this SOS came out by accident again, I was just trying to really invent.
And Shauna broke down some doors for you.
She did. I was like, oh my God, I owe her
Awesome.
something big because it was just kind of a funny
Mm-hmm.
chain of events. But
Mm-hmm.
I got pinged by a couple other folks, and I have some community cloud product owners on my speed dial now because they reached out to me. And if I hit a wall, I'm not gonna lie, I do an occasional SOS email. I'm like, hey, how about what does this do, or how do I do this? And they've always been super helpful, and I feel blessed and
Mm-hmm.
honored to have these types of
That
relationships.
is
So again,
awesome.
it's not on purpose. I try not
Right.
to burn bridges or go the
Right.
well too many times. I don't cry wolf either. I just when
Yeah.
needed, it was
That's
awesome.
great. I have to tell you, I actually have a funny, somewhat similar but different story. So a lot of people know that I often publish memes that relate to Salesforce,
Yes,
and
yes.
those memes, people often turn to me and they're like, "Oh my God, you are so funny." I am really not funny. I can't make this stuff up. These are real scenarios that I encounter during the course of the regular workday. And instead of cringing or trying to rip someone's head off, I express myself by creating a meme that represents that moment in time, and then I simply share it. So I try to turn it into something funny and somewhat positive while at the same time expressing my frustration. Anyway, I was working on a process builder. I was doing something with process builder, and it wasn't working for me. And I had a couple of minutes, and it took me a moment to have that. It was really a light bulb moment. It was me, and it was the logic that I was implementing in process builder. It was not
Mhm,
as much as people might have issues with process builder. The issue that I had at that moment had nothing to do with process builder. It was me. But
mhm.
nonetheless, I took the experience and I said, "Oh, let me create a meme out of this." And I had like a kid whose facial expression was like major disappointment, and it was something like the face you make when your process builder or workflow doesn't work as expected. And I just published it as something funny to share with the community. And oh my God, the responses that I got from people: "Call me. What's the issue? Let me help you. What is it? Give me a screenshot." And I'm like, "No, chill,
Yeah.
chill. There is no issue. Just, it was funny. It was meant to be funny. Calm down."
See, and by the way, I love your memes. I
Thank
see them
you.
all the time, and they do make me laugh. So I do think you're funny. I'm sorry, David, you are. But yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All good. All right, so tell me a little bit because you started like really to segue into your involvement in the community in this holistic sense of community, as in, posting something online and people are jumping in. I mean, even to be able to post something on social media and to have Shauna Wolverton jump in and then start introducing you to the right people to resolve the issue. That's huge. And Shauna, if you're listening, I need to get you on the show because you're awesome and the way you communicate is fantastic and you have tremendous wisdom to share from the product perspective. But
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about, or share with the audience rather, with my listeners, your involvement in. You're very involved in the Salesforce community in so many ways, informal ways and in informal ways. So why don't you share a little bit about that and how you got involved in the community and what that experience has been like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, starting in about 2006, I was a regular attendee at user group meetings, and it was kind of funny because again, I was all like an accidental admin, fell
Hmm.
into the role of owning it, started falling in love with the actual tool, and always was trying to challenge myself and learn more. So I learned about this user group community that was out there, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit intimidated about going to
Hmm.
the first meeting. I wasn't sure what to expect, or even like the flow of a meeting, or
Right.
I felt maybe I was like not qualified to go. I just didn't know
Right. Is it
what
a
it took to
therapy
go.
session like Alcoholics
Yeah,
Anonymous? Are they going to weigh me in like Weight Watchers?
yeah, right. Like I was like, what? It's gonna happen. They're gonna ask me questions. I don't know the answer.
Right.
They're gonna kick me out. Like I didn't know what to expect. So I get into this meeting. It was at the Fairmont in Chicago. Drew Alexander was at the user group meeting leader at the time, and he's a really good speaker and really great presenter. I
Hmm.
was in awe of everything they were speaking of, and I actually felt like I belonged there, which was again, I was totally intimidated by even just kind of showing up. I felt like I was putting myself out there by making the step and committing to actually attending, and then like sitting back and feeling like at first I didn't know what to expect, but as they started talking, I was realizing I kind of knew the answers to some of this stuff, and I actually could probably help people where I
Hmm.
didn't think I could ever help people before because no one in my organization ever asked. So I started feeling the sense of community by going to these meetings. I felt like, wow, I can
Hmm.
actually maybe help somebody, and let's reciprocate. Maybe I might need help one day too in a scenario.
Yep.
It was a really good experience, and I was going to meetings for about 2 years. Drew actually had stepped down because he was taking a position with Salesforce. He was moving over to join the company, so it was vacating the role of user group leader in
Hmm.
Chicago. By going to the meetings, I was just getting introduced to other folks in the local community, and Salesforce actually approached me at the time and asked if I would be interested in taking the position of user group leader. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I don't know, it's a pretty big commitment. And I was like, I was kind of scared. And
What am I signing
and
up for
I
exactly?
know, I'm like, yeah, like what? Nice weekends and what? So I was kind of like a little bit. I was honored, and I
Right.
was like, I did before I said yes. I said, I kind of like put some ground rules because Chicagoland is very large. There's a
Right.
whole, metro area. I
Yeah.
always worked in downtown Chicago. I said, I absolutely will take the role of a metro, like basically metropolitan Chicago, like in the city, within
Hmm.
city limits. And I
Hmm.
said, I actually would like a community, a user group co-leader, just to
Hmm.
help kind of bounce ideas off of, help to co-coordinate things. And I was honored to be introduced to Cecile Horsky. She was involved with the community for a long time. She's actually a current Tampa Bay user group leader. She moved to Florida
Hmm.
a couple years ago, and has been helping in that area there. But so she was my co-lead, and we were doing that since 2008. So that happened in 2008, like the spring of 2008. So I'm coming up on 9 years almost. But it's been a really good experience. User groups were around, but obviously now there's so many more, which is a great thing to see the evolution of that even, and with the wide-reaching ways that user group leaders are kind of all engaged, like yourself and myself. It's just so much fun. Like I
Hmm.
love it. eventually, I'm sure I will retire from my position and move on. But I really enjoy the community. I enjoy the interaction. I find it rewarding. I find helping others rewarding.
Yep.
It's just an amazing thing to volunteer for. But I laugh because anyone outside the user group community, or like Salesforce community, I should say, or our Ohana, like my personal family, they have no idea why I do it. They're like, "You don't get paid for it?" Like, no.
Yeah, I get the same question all the time. Like, are you out of your mind? Like, why do you do this? Like, yes, I'm out of my mind, but you knew that anyway. So, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. No, same thing here. They're kind of like, they try to just think I'm like a glutton or something. Like, just bring more on, right? But I'm okay. I like it. I enjoy it. If I did not enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. I feel like I can help people. Yeah. The one thing I get out of it is the feeling of giving back and helping people. I also like being a connector. I love connecting people to the right people. I like meeting good people. And if somebody ever needs something, I'm like, oh, you should talk to this person. I just love being that connector, and that gives me the opportunity to really, I feel like I'm being impactful by being that connector.
Yeah, and that is very rewarding in and of itself. I'm totally with you there.
Absolutely.
That's great. So aside from the Chicago user group, you're also involved in Midwest Dreaming. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, Midwest Dreaming. Absolutely. So Midwest Dreaming came about. It's actually Eric Dreshfield's brainchild. Eric had thought of the idea of doing this like a local Midwestern community event. There was actually Snowforce, which was already an active community event that was out in Utah. And like Becky Webster and Daniel House put that event on, and Eric's like, I think it'd be a great idea to do one in the Midwest. Well, couldn't help him out in 2011, but he actually put one on in Louisville, Kentucky, and then we kind of came back to the idea a couple of years ago. Probably was it 2014? I think was the first year we did it in Chicago. But we were actually able to put it together, and it made it happen. It was a really fun labor of love, but it was amazing. We had a great response. We had a great number of attendees. And the goal of Midwest Dreaming is really bringing like high quality user group level content, things that you might see like sessions. We try to do it like sessions like they do at Dreamforce, but you have tracks, and then you have the different time slots, and it's really about trying to educate the users and trying to provide them with high quality content, high quality networking opportunities. It's all about the ecosystem, and it is super fun. We're doing it this year in August. It's going to be August 10th and 11th. We're hosting it this year at a different venue. It's going to be at the Palmer House Hilton in the Loop of Chicago. Nice. Yeah, it's beautiful property, and we're looking forward to that. So we're actively engaged with our core team, having discussions and finalizing things. Registration actually is open now, so anyone listening, it's still an early bird rate, and registration's open. We should be finalizing an opening call for stories, or I should say call for stories should be opening in the next, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. We're just trying to finalize some of that. Yeah, so we've gotten so many submissions. Like last year, I think we had almost 100 submissions for only 30 spots. So it's a pretty competitive, I guess a competitive spot to kind of get your session in. But we vet all the submissions, and we actually do blind vetting. Well, last year we did a blind vetting where we didn't know the name of the individual or the title or where the individual worked. We didn't want it to look like we're favoriting anyone. We actually looked at their abstract to see what kind of presentation they were going to do, or what kind of teaching moment they were going to present, and we based it on an abstract and did votes internally, and then kind of I did the Vanna White where I unveiled who the winners were. It was a very fun experience because I was not participating in the voting process because I knew who all the submitters were. So in the end, after everyone voted, I was was allowed to kind of reveal who the winners were. So
That's awesome.
it was
Very
cool.
cool. So, by the way, if any listeners want to register for Midwest Dreamin', I will be putting the link to Midwest Dreamin' in the show notes that corresponds to this podcast episode. So you could look for it there.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. So tell me a little bit about shifting topics a little bit here. Tell me a little
Sure.
bit about some apps on the App Exchange. And of the various apps that are on the App Exchange, which two would you select as your favorite and why?
Good question. Good question. So I love Data Loader IO.
Mm-hmm.
It is my go-to tool for any kind of data updates, data inserts, upserts, deletions.
Yep.
So Data Loader IO is like part of my regular toolkit. It's just a good admin tool to have. It's easy to use. There's a free version of it, which people can take advantage of, and it's very intuitive to use. So I prefer Data Loader IO, which is a MuleSoft product. I've been using that for about 2 years, so one of my favorites. Another favorite admin tool that I use, which it's an old school tool, but it is super powerful, it's Field Trip. It does a field analysis. So if you've worked in a Frankenstein type of a system, Field Trip is your friend, because you would never be able to evaluate, what's the percentage of population on certain attributes, and to that level of degree on a one-by-one basis, you would go crazy.
Yep.
So Field Trip is a one-stop shop for any kind of admin or analyst tool to kind of evaluate, I think, the health and the data of a system. So.
And Field Trip is free, even better.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
a lot of my favorite tools are the free tools.
Mm-hmm.
I also used Cirrus Insight for a long time too, which was the email
Yep.
tool that you install it, and it is cool. So if you're having a conversation, you want to make sure it gets logged within Salesforce, and that person doesn't exist, you can still create the new contact on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
You can add leads into Salesforce. So those are some tools in my toolkit.
It's funny because I'm a big fan of all three. Cirrus Insight, so many reasons why I love it. The level of productivity that it gives you directly from your inbox, and being able to not only see but access and edit, create records directly from your inbox into Salesforce is a big deal. It's a really a big deal. Love that.
Yeah, because you live in your inbox the majority of the time. I know I do, and you kind of if you have to toggle between systems, it's kind of a pain. So, big fan.
Yeah, and dataloader.io, I'm also a regular user of that, and it's for any admin. When, as you mentioned, if you need to bulk update, insert, create, or delete records, it's huge. And same functionality. It's not radically different from the free regular app that you download on your desktop of Data Loader provided by Salesforce. Just the user interface is, I think, way better.
Absolutely. And one other plug to Rollup Helper. Have you ever used Rollup Helper?
Yep.
Passage Technology. They have a couple cool tools, but Rollup Helper is one of my favorites. Again, I needed Rollup Helper back in the day when I had to try to figure out how to do those roll-up summaries. I think I probably had some crazy algorithms and some rocket science in there back in the day. But these tools are so cool, and it's super helpful, and you can relate different objects and create those roll-ups on
Big time.
roll-up fields. Yeah, so pretty cool.
Super. Thank you for sharing. Last question that I have for you. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who is relatively new to the world of Salesforce, what piece of advice would you share with them?
Don't give up, and don't don't be well, this is maybe two pieces of advice.
Go for
Don't
it.
give up, and
It's
don't be
buy one, get
afraid
one
to
free day on the Brainy 8 show.
don't give up. There's so many free resources out there for you, and don't be afraid to ask or reach out. There's no such thing as a dumb question. Don't be intimidated, because I think I used to feel that way in some cases where people would ask questions, and sometimes if you feel like you should be on the same level, or you don't know maybe the right verbiage or the word to use in something, that you might feel a little intimidated. Don't. Like, we've all been there. So if you have a question, you're not sure of something, just ask it. The community is amazing, and they will take the time to help break it down and try to get to the root of what you're asking. And there's no, the old school saying of there's no such thing as a dumb question. There's not, because you might not be familiar with some of the Salesforce lingo that we've all lived in for many, many years. So there's no such thing as a dumb question.
Awesome. That is sage advice. Very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Denise, I really appreciate you joining me on this episode of the Brainy 8 Show. I want to once again congratulate you for all of the hard work that you do and your involvement in the Salesforce community, which is fantastic. It's very inspiring. So I just want to thank you for that. Keep up the great work. And
Thank you. Welcome.
Sure. And I definitely look forward to having you again on the Brainy 8 Show at some time in the not too distant future.
Likewise. Hope to see you out in Chicago at Midwest Streaming this August.
Bet.
So cool.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Brainy 8 Show. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to any resources referenced in this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to brainy8.com to subscribe to the Brainy 8 blog, where I regularly share Salesforce-related tips and tricks to help you become a Salesforce rockstar.